we shall make a start. Welcome everyone. Now we've all got here. So yes, to this webinar. This one is called It's Never Too Late to Transform Your Relationship, even with people that are gone. And we're going to explore that title with Gabriela through her experience. So she will be sharing some of her life experience with us. And we're considering the fact that when people die unexpectedly or relationships end in a way that leads to people not speaking, we can feel regret or upset, and we can find ourselves living with a heavy heart. And so, yeah, what Gabriela will share is that it's actually possible to experience harmony and peace of mind in previously difficult relationships with people who've died or we don't any longer have contact with, which is a really hopeful message for us all. So very much looking forward to that. The format it's going to take is a question and answer.
Katie, your sound is a little off to me. Can you hear Katie okay, everybody else?
Mm-hmm. You can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know why. I'll mute myself while you're talking.
Okay. So for those who don't know much about Gabriela, professionally, Gabriela has dedicated her entire life to helping clients discover their well-being and the natural genius that resides at the center of all human beings. And she's been doing that for over 2 decades in which she's been sharing the fundamental laws that create the human experience. And she's worked individually and in groups across many settings, including, I have a list here, education, alcohol and drug recovery, youth and adult incarceration, community development, burnout prevention, and executive coaching. And it says here that seeing her clients blossom, regardless of their particular culture, gender, age, or circumstance, inspires her to continue her work in English and in Spanish. So yeah, the form today is going to be a Q&A. So myself and Maria will be asking questions of Gabriela to explore her story and the fact that it's never too late to transform your relationships, even with people who are gone. So, and hopefully also we will then have time to hear your reflections and impressions and answer any questions. And we intend to finish on the hour. So that's 7 p.m. here in the UK. I think that's 11 a.m. in for most people who've joined us from the US. That actually there's an awful lot of time zones here. So I should probably stop there. So to hand it over to you, Gabriela, yeah, the first question, what is it you would like to share and why is it you would like to share it with us?
Yes, well, I want to share that this webinar actually was inspired by something that I read that Azul wrote. That was just beautiful. It was really, really beautiful. And Azul, I don't know if you would like, if you could summarize it, like maybe shortly, just what you wrote, because it was so beautiful. It really inspired me.
I try. I was talking about, I was writing about my relationship with my mother. It's a very difficult relationship. We don't have any contact right now. You could say that she's a narcissistic, I don't know. It was a very strange relationship, very hard, a lot of violence, abuse, and very hard things. And I'm a mother now. I have a daughter, she's 2 years old. I have an insight while I was with her, where I could see that my mother is just very caught up in her thinking and doesn't know anything about that and doesn't have any way of getting out of there, and that how she was as a mother with me doesn't say anything about how she is, or her loving nature, or my value, or if I am enough or not. I don't know if that's clear. I'm trying to assume something that maybe when you hear it is something like common sense, but for me it was a very strong thing to see or to know. That was all.
Yeah. Yeah, and when I read that, it just really reminded me also, Pam made she had another webinar a while back, and she was talking about something similar, you know, just kind of seeing innocence in, you know, the people around us that maybe we're not in relationship the way we would like to. And what happened to me is that I remembered what happened when I found out some details about my father's death. My father got murdered, and I didn't know who had murdered him. And in this one particular visit to one of my cousins, she told me. And when she told me, what was amazing and still it's just surprising to me, is that I was able to understand that a lot of the things that he did, which were not like super wise, you know, and super healthy for our relationship, and for my family at large. There were a lot of decisions that impacted us for many years. But at the end, that he really just did the best he could. And that was shocking to me. And the other thing that happened during that conversation with my cousin is that I felt compassion, love, and understanding for the person that murdered my father. And after my father got murdered, my mom started drinking, and I also started just seeing that she just did the best she could. And this was transformative to me, because I would not say that I had a tremendous pain that impacted me daily, but apparently I had a heavy heart. You know, there was something that was heavy in my soul around this. There were many questions that I could not respond, that I couldn't even ask, right? And this happened when I was very young. So by 11, there was like a lot of things that were like just right? And many people would tell me that this kind of event would have an impact for the rest of my life. And you hear this, right? It's like it's a common idea. And so when I read your post, Azul, what it reminded me is that there is hope to experience relationship with our loved ones, even if they're not here, in a completely different way. And what has happened, actually, it's been transformative, because particularly, I think, with the relationship with my father, I have started to feel close to him. Like at a human level, I've started to understand a lot of the questions that I had. The importance of it has dissipated. And I have found a connection that transcends death, right? And it's just this human connection to another human being. And I have found a light heart. That's what happened. So I just wanted to share that, because I think many of us, I mean, you know, the thing is, we all have experienced people passing, maybe relationships that end abruptly. And sometimes we feel upset or sadness, deep pain. And we think that this is going to last forever, because it feels like it's going to last forever, to be perfectly frank, right? It feels intense and painful. But I wanted to, after I read your post, I wanted to just start talking about this. Is it possible for us to experience a change in our relationship with somebody if we're not talking to them, or if they have passed, right? Or if they have left abruptly? And so I think, like Katie was saying, it's hopeful to know that it is possible for us to experience relationships that have ended differently than how we're experiencing it right now or in the past. So thank you. I wanted to really acknowledge you because, you know, our group Thriving Together really is intended to create a community where we support each other. And I thought it was perfect that you wrote something and it really inspired me. And then, you know, Pam also, when she did her webinar, there was like this thing about her mom too, and, you know, just some change in her perspective. And so this is how this group is intended to work, right? It's like us leaning on each other and learning from each other and using each other's wisdoms and insights to thrive. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Yes. Katie.
Gabriela, you said that something shifted for you on a very human level, and you started to have more understanding towards your father, and I think for your mother. What was it that shifted? What's the understanding that you saw?
The very first thing that shifted for me is it was that I had never seen my parents as people. I had seen them as gods. I don't know. I had seen them as superheroes, right? I didn't realize that they had low moods. I didn't realize that they get caught up in their thinking, right? Like that was the very first thing that happened. The other thing that happened is that I realized that I was experiencing my parents currently with some very old thinking. You know, like thinking that when I was little, like thinking that I thought when I was 14. And you know, I'm 50 now, right? So it's like, wow, you're still experiencing your parents with thinking when you were 14. And so what I realized is that this is really mind-blowing for me. I wasn't even experiencing my parents. I was just experiencing my thoughts, the thoughts that I had when I was 14 or 15. And that opened me up, you know, because what I realized is like, oh, I had some thoughts at that age. It was intense. It was a very intense period of my life, but I never, I just always would experience my thinking about that, you know, my parents, like anytime my parents or my mom or my dad would come up, then that thinking would show up. And I thought, this is never going to go away. I'm never going to be able to experience this differently because I saw my thinking as the truth. I didn't and I teach this. I teach this all day long in English and Spanish, you know, at 10 o'clock on Sundays, all the time, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, it just shows you how invisible this can be, right? I didn't realize that when I experienced pain, I wasn't longer in now, right? I was innocently, I didn't want to do this, but I was chewing over what had happened and how it had happened and what it meant and what it didn't mean. I didn't know that my pain today was caused innocently. I didn't want to suffer because I would get the thought that I had when I was 14 or 15, whatever, and I would bring it up and I would go over it over and over and over and over and over. And of course, the result of that was pain, right? That was shocking to me. So when I started seeing my parents as people, I realized, well, you know, I make mistakes and I get caught up and I say things that are not quite what I would have liked to if I had a greater perspective. So it was intense, Katie. It was intense when I realized, wow, I'm stuck like in a hurricane of thought. And I go around and around and around and around and around. Again, I didn't want to do this. I just didn't know that that's what was happening.
And you mentioned earlier as well that some of the behaviours of your parents could be considered not helpful to your relationship, and that you saw that they were innocent too. And I think in our preparation you mentioned that you realised that they simply wanted to be happy like you do. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yes, I can. You know, I want to talk about my dad a little bit because my dad was really the enigma for me. My dad left his primary marriage to have a second marriage. And there were many things I didn't understand. And then he also did some financial decisions around the business that impacted my mother, us, my uncles, my cousins. I mean, it was a huge thing, right? And some of my family members, they had to pay debts for 10 years. Okay, so this was huge. It was a huge mess. I still think that the choices that were made were not helpful and that they had an impact in us. However, what I started seeing a few years ago is that this was the way my father thought he had to use to be happy. You know, before I thought he was just selfish SOB. That's what I thought. He's just a selfish, self-centered, not caring person. And there was a lot of evidence actually that supported my belief, right? And then other people would support my belief too. They would go like, yeah, you know. What I realized is that, you know, we all do what we think we can do, what we need to do to be okay or to be happy. Even extreme behaviors like drinking, like cheating, like whatever, you know. I could see it with the drinking with my mother. I could not see it with what my dad did. Somehow I could see that my mom's drinking was her effort to deal with her pain, but I could not see that whatever my dad did was in an effort for him to be happy and content. That being said, I would not recommend, right, some of the things that he did. So it's not like I'm saying, oh yeah, you know, this was fine, because I still think like this was a mess. But I can see, you know, and I can see that even with the person that killed them. I could see that the person that killed them in a moment of intense passion and desperation, maybe a lot of anger and frustration. So when I saw that he was doing the best he could, that my mother was doing the best she could, you know, and that the person that murdered him in the moment thought that that's what needed to happen. It allowed me to connect to all three of them from a human being perspective. You know, like, I understand what it is like to feel really pissed off. I understand what it feels like. I understand what it feels like when you just want to, you know, when you don't even know what to do because you want to leave, but you just, you know, walk out the door and then you come back in and then you yell some more and then you're like, no, I'm going to walk, you know, and then you're just kind of going back and forth. I understand what that is like. And I also understand what it's like to feel really sad and not know what to do. So that's what I mean. It just allowed me to connect to them as people, as human beings, and almost like feel compassion for their experience and also for my shortcomings, right? Also I didn't know that I could experience them differently. I just thought for a while that the only way for me to experience my parents were with a lot of suffering. Because you see, you suffer when you lose your parents, right? Like, these are the things that you learn. There are certain things we learn, and I did suffer, but I didn't know that it was possible for me to also feel peace of mind and even love and a sense of peace with them. So it was transformational. And I'm hoping that, you know, with this conversation, that those of us that have relationships that have ended suddenly or that we're still experiencing with so much upset, that we can see hope. Now, you know, I also want to tell you that there are times, particularly when I think about my mother, and even in this moment, where I miss her. You know, I miss my mother and I miss her deeply. Even though she was drinking, right? Even though all of that was happening, I miss her. And I also can have a sense of hope. And one of the things that has happened is that I don't know how this happened, but I have a deep connection as well. You know, I have a deep connection with the essence of my mother. My mother was a great human being. She had her shortcomings, right? You know, and I have a memory of my dad when he was doing a magic trick with me, but he was really bad at magic. So I could tell exactly what was happening. He was like, what do you think? And I'm like, well, it's behind your finger, you know. It was like I was little. And I have that. So it allowed me to think about my parents with joy and have a sense of hope and experience sadness, because, you know, like I told you, you know, I do experience sadness and upset, but it is not overwhelming like it used to. So that's kind of my hope for being here. Katie?
Thank you, Gabriela. And I'm wondering if anyone else has a question or if anything really resonated with anyone. Would you be happy to invite people in, Gabriela?
I'm happy to invite people in, of course.
So, yeah, please do, in your own time, unmute yourself if you do have a question or a response or anything that's occurred to you.
Suzanne has her hand up.
Yes, this topic really, really resonates with me, because I would say that of all the areas of my life that have been impacted by the principles, this is the most significant one. My parents were older parents, and they've been gone for a long time. My mother's been gone for more than half my life. My father has been gone, oh, I don't know exactly, but, you know, almost that long, a long time. And there was so much pain in the relationships, especially with my father, who was an alcoholic and a narcissist and a drug addict, and everything about my experience of living with him was painful. And we were indeed estranged when he finally passed, because I could not, with the thinking that I had at the time, figure out a way to connect with that man. And I worked on it later in therapy, and I was supposed to write a letter to my father, and I submitted it. It took me 3 years to write that letter. And then the therapist came back with, okay, now you write his response. And I went, no, this isn't what this is about. And then I began to study Buddhism after that. And that Buddhism provides also this pathway to continuing a relationship with someone who is dead and transforming that relationship. And so I had begun to move in that direction, but coming to the principles, everything just, without my focusing on it at all, it all shifted completely. And I could see all the pain that my father must have been living with that caused him to drink and cheat and take drugs and do all the things that he did and be as obnoxious as he was. And I could see the pain behind it. And now I live fully just with the knowledge that in this physical form, I continue his enjoying the pleasures of living. He loved food, he loved wine, he loved walking in the mountains, he loved being in nature. And whenever I do those things, I am connected with him and I am continuing those activities for him, in essence. And I feel nothing but warmth and connection, what I yearned for while he was alive and never had, but now have in any moment when I think of him, which is not all the time. I mean, when someone's been gone a very long time, you don't think of them all the time. But when I do think of him, it's always with this wonderful warmth. So yes, thank you for sharing, Gabriela. And my experience has been very similar. And it really, it's one of the most incredible things that this understanding can do for a person.
You know, I think what you just said was really actually surprising to me, that my connection, my sense of connection has gotten stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it's just sort of counterintuitive because they're no longer here, right? But my sense of deep connection has gotten stronger. And I just want to say something really little, because you reminded me of when you said, you know, I continue to do some of the things that he liked. My mother loved yellow. So it's like, you know, I'm going to put a lot of yellow flowers around, right? And it's just sort of like a lighthearted way, right, of connecting. So I just wanted to really rescue that, Suzanne, because it's interesting how you can develop a deep sense of connection even if they're not here. And for me, actually, particularly with my dad, it has gotten stronger and stronger and stronger. So thank you for saying that.
Thank you.
Pamela, what's that?
Imagine that. I loved what Suzanne said about that, continuing to sort of honor her father by doing the things he liked. Wow, what a great idea. Mm-hmm. And then I realized, as you responded, Gabriela, I don't know what my mother and father liked. Mm-hmm. And then I realized, did I even know them? Did I even take the time? This makes me sad. I don't think I ever took the time to know them. They were just my parents. Mm-hmm. I never asked, what's your favorite color? Or what do you really love doing? Or all the things you ask friends. I never asked my parents that. And that's probably why we didn't get along so good. Do you think? I also thought, while you were talking, Gab, that something that shifted for me is the relationship with me. by knowing these three principles and knowing about how our thinking is creating our experience of what's going on. So I have lived most of my life with lots and lots of mommy guilt. One child, thousands of days filled with guilt. What I didn't do right, how I didn't do this, what I did wrong, all the recriminations and blame. And so you know that you that listened to me when I spoke about my relationship with my son, I did a lot of stuff to change that. And that was as a result of all the guilt I felt. And I realized, well, you were talking, Gabby, I'm not carrying that same relationship to me now. I did the best that I could. I know, I hate that saying. You did the best that you could with what you were thinking. Yeah. However, that's also the truth.
Say it, Pamela.
So, even though I thought this topic didn't seem very interesting to me, yeah. No more.
Okay, thank you. Therese?
Azul has her hand up.
Oh, I'm
Gabriela.
sorry. Go ahead.
It's okay. Let's hear Teresa. It's okay for me.
Yeah, Teresa, do you want to go ahead and then Azul will come to you?
Sorry about that. So my mum and I love my mum and dad, had a great relationship with them. I felt that I was very close to them. And then last year I discovered, and I won't bore you with the details, but my dad wasn't my biological father. And so I was pretty upset and pissed off that they didn't bother to tell me that my mother had had an affair with our next door neighbor. So that was, you know, a little bit of a shock because both my parents have passed and my dad died about 3 years ago. And my dad was a great guy for taking me on, considering I was the next door neighbor's daughter. I mean, I have the greatest respect for him. He was also, my dad was a narcissist. He was very short. He had small man's complex, and he was very cutting with some of his words. And I remember, even as an adult, I would phone him and he would say something, it would just cut me at the bloody knees. It was like, oh my God, Dad. But, you know, I loved him unconditionally. And I hate to say this, but I really don't know why I loved him unconditionally. And then he tried to tell me just before he died that he wasn't my biological father, which I thought was pretty sweet of him. But anyway, he didn't get around to telling me, and I discovered it through DNA last year. But as far as I'm concerned, my dad was my dad. I don't care whose sperm I came from, you know, just no big deal. But the funny thing is, I've always loved him unconditionally. And something in me tells me I loved him unconditionally because I knew what an amazing sacrifice he gave.
Mm.
I mean, my mum was playing around with a neighbor, for Christ's sake. You know, I mean, back in the swinging 60s. And yeah, and there's not many men that would say, okay, sweetie, you're pregnant by the next door neighbor, but I'll raise her as my own. What a great dad. What an amazing man. That's it.
Yeah.
Love him dearly.
Yeah. You know, Teresa, thank you so much for sharing, because
I feel closer to him now than I ever have.
yeah,
And I still talk to him. And I thank him for raising me. Sorry, guys.
Okay. You know, I love that. I love that what you just said about you feel close to him, you know, closer than you've ever felt. I think that's what you said.
Yeah, I do. It's true.
And I think that was part of what I learned, that death is not a barrier for us to feel close to our loved ones and for us to feel deeply connected to our loved ones at a spiritual level, right? Because it transcends, our connection as human beings transcends the body. That's what I think.
Yeah. I hear things, I hear music, and I always think about him. He loved Frank Sinatra. So I think about him and I hear things and I just think, oh, my dad would like that, or I see something. And I really mean that. I feel closer to him now than I ever have. And I think I just have the greatest respect for him for taking me on. And it's funny actually, because I have two brothers, and my dad used to say to me, "You're the only one I never worry about because I know you're always going to be okay." And I was his favorite. I wasn't even his biological child, but I was definitely his favorite. I mean, that just tells me a lot about the man, even though he was a narcissist and he was quite cutting with some of the things he would say. But, you know, I stop and think, what an amazing guy. He knew that I wasn't his child, and yet he chose to love me. And, you know, I don't know how my parents ever managed to work through having an affair, and which is one thing, but then having a child as the result. I don't know how they ever managed to do that, but great people. I was very, very blessed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Azul.
Thank you, Teresa. I just wanted to add that my father was also a difficult one. He was an alcoholic and he died when I was 20. There was a lot of violence at home, but somehow I could see his innocence before the innocence of my mother. I mean, when I started knowing about the three principles, and I was getting very deep in them, but it was like, okay, but there is one exception and it's my mother. I mean, come on, there's no way. But now that I was able to see her innocence, and she's not dead, she's alive, but we don't have a relationship right now because she continues behaving in a way that is not healthy. Although I'm open to have a relationship with her if she approached me in a nicer way or with boundaries, but I feel now, and for me the most amazing thing is that it's like now I am allowed to feel an overflowing love for her. I mean, I'm sorry. The daughter that is in me, the little girl, she always loved her parents. And the logical, there were a lot of logical reasons that couldn't be. I mean, they are doing awful things, crazy things, bad things. I mean, I have a lot of proofs that you can't love them. I could show you. I have a lot of people that says, "Come on, your parents are like, no way." I mean, And now that I see the innocence in both of them, I feel like an overflowing love that allows me to be more connected with life, to feel for the first time not broken, not damaged, not less than any other person in the world. Of course, that helps me to be I think, a better mother. Not because I'm doing things in a better way, but I thought I had to live my whole life until I died with my heart full of scars. Like, that's not going to be fixed. It's going to hurt until you die, something like that. And at some point I was imagining, okay, next life, please, a healthy family. I want to feel that thing that children feel like. But when my daughter was born and she was very little, one day I felt huge amount of love for her, but I felt with no, I don't know, new mothers usually calls her mother, how do you do this? Or just hear me or whatever. And I didn't have any female figure to stand for me. I have a lot of friends, but not the same. And I remember one afternoon that I was hugging my baby, and I asked her, my husband, please hug me, like, but in a, I don't know, in a motherly way, because I need to feel, to try to imagine what does it feel to have a being that only cares for you with pure love. And now that I see her innocence, I'm starting to remember like small fragments of our life together when she was seeing me, small moments of love that I was thinking when I was a child that, okay, that was just my imagination or miracles. But now I see that those moments were the truth, and the rest was crazy thinking. She was doing what she could. She didn't have any other option. She still doesn't have it. But I'm finding myself through the day, like, I don't know, thinking of her and feeling love and remember small details. She loves to eat pizza. I don't know. But I really have a deep desire that everybody that had a hard childhood see this at some point, because it restores you. I don't know if I'm using the right English words because it's very difficult for me to tell this, but there is a feeling that I think that every child that has been in a crazy home has, that deep sense of loneliness and not being understood by other people. Mostly if you have problems with your mother, it's difficult that the rest of the people understand that feeling, because mothers are something like a sacred thing, you know? Everybody loves their mother. Mothers love everybody. So if you don't have a mother that loves you in a healthy way, of course every mother has something, but you understand me. There is this feeling of loneliness and lack of connection and not being understood, and then when you see this innocence that, I mean, I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't looking for it. It just happened. And I think it's there for everybody. That's it. That's all. I'm not talking anymore.
Did you say something, Gabriela? You and
I did. I was saying that Azul, Pamela te aplaudió. You know, because I think the restoration, I think that's a word, it restores you. And I think, yeah, these conversations, your post restored, it reminded me of something, you know, and these conversations are intended, and this community is intended to just kind of support each other, right? And to get a sense of our peace of mind and our soul, and, you know, to share this. So it's appropriate that you said everything, you know, given that all of this kind of was born from your post. But the great hope, you know, the reason why we want to do these monthly webinars is because we really see that there is possibility for us to thrive in spite of.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thanks to you for organizing this and for everybody for listening. I don't want to take too much time. I was just inspired to tell you that, and thank you for hearing, deeply hearing.
All right, Miss Katie.
Thank you, everybody. I'm still hearing, I'm still taking it in. It was really beautiful sharing. Thank you. And thank you, Gabriela, for kicking it off. Is there anything else you'd like to say in summary?
I don't know. You know, Maria, do you want to say anything? Maria?
I just want to say thank you, everyone, for your openness. It was a really beautiful call, and it really shows that we can experience love regardless of the circumstances. Whether someone is alive or dead, we can have a different relationship with them, even if we don't actually interact with them. So it's really hopeful. I'm very touched by all your sharing. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. So one of you has asked to stay a little longer and to just don't hang up. To the rest of you guys, thank you so much. We actually have a series of webinars prepared, so stay connected. The next webinar is going to be, I'm going to be having one of my friends come over. Her name is Gina Liberto, and Gina's an amazing woman. Nate, we have a man, Nate Moore from, so Nate, we were saying before you got in that one of the prerequisites to be in the group is you have to be a good looking woman. So welcome to the group.
Honored. And I am grateful that I had the invite. And after listening to everything today, I will say this. I've heard my own personal me in all of the stories, some shape, form, or fashion. And why I was invited, why I'm here, I'm not sure yet, but I do know that something resonated with me that helped me understand who I am as a father, who has relationships that are just so torn up and broken. But thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Nate. So next month, we're going to have Gina Liberto, and she's a dear friend of mine, and she's married to an awesome guy named Mike. And Mike, some years ago, had an accident that left him on a chair. He became a paraplegic and has had, as you can imagine, a bunch of medical issues. And I love how Gina has moved through this experience with a sense of grace. So I asked her to see if she would be willing to come and just share some of her thoughts and insights and whatever, you know. She's strong, she's beautiful, she's kind. She doesn't let him get away with anything. And then she's also so supportive. So she'll be with us. That's all I have to say. Thank you for being here. And we'll see you, I think, do we have the date? We have the date, right, for the next webinar. It's actually September 21st, same time. We'll be sending you an email to remind you. Alrighty, thank you, Betty. Thank you, Suzanne, Teresa, Karina, Nate. Diana, muchísimas gracias por estar aquí. Nos vemos pronto. Ana Alejandra. Alrighty, bye.
Everyone.